For more on Shimon Peres, my colleague Elaine Reyes spoke to Matt Duss. He's the president of the Foundation for Middle East Peace. We asked him how his legacy was shaped.
Shimon Peres is really one of the last living members of the founding generation. He was one of the younger members of that generation, but this is someone who was a part of Israel's history from the very beginning. He was a protege of David Ben-Gurion, who was the first prime minister of the state of Israel. He was deeply involved in Israel's defense and its foreign policy, and a whole range of its policies throughout the existence of the state of Israel. So his loss really does mark the end of an era for the state of Israel. I think, as with any leader who has been involved with his, with the policies of his own country for as long as Peres has, there are ups and downs, there are positives and negatives. Clearly, there are marks on his record, such as the Kana massacre in 1996. That are remembered with great anger, understandably, in the region and elsewhere, in which more than 100 Palestinian civilians were killed by Israeli shelling. That was a very dark mark on his record. He was also one of the early supporters of the settlement movement, which later in his career did recognize was a real problem for Israel in its search for peace with the Palestinians. But he was one of the leaders of the Oslo peace process. I think that's what many people remember him for. The end of his career, he was one of Israel's strongest voices for a peace agreement with the Palestinians, ending the occupation and creating a Palestinian state, and arguing that that would lead or open the possibility for a broader peace between Israel and the rest of the region.
Why did it seem that he was more popular abroad than he was at home?
I don't know that that's uncommon, being more popular abroad. For leaders, people who lived in Israel, people who watched his career up close, I think we're probably privy to some of the more questionable aspects, or maybe we might call them, problematic aspects of his career. I think he was most popular in the West and in the rest of the world for his role in the Oslo peace process, which people look upon very, very favorably. But even someone I would compare to, just for example, someone like Gorbachev, is seen in the West as someone who kind of broke through the Cold War and kind of led Russia to a new role, ended the Cold War, but he's seen quite differently by many Russians. And I think one of the best things you can say about him is that he had a lot of contradictions. I think he, to his credit, recognized that some of the things that he pursued earlier in his career, while they might have made sense at the time, in retrospect, I think created some difficulties. But again, to his credit, I think he served as someone who was looked upon favorably by many in the world and in Israel, someone with great credibility and authority, having been there at the creation of the state of Israel, to say, listen, if we want this to be a country we can admire and a country we really want to belong to, we need to end this occupation and make peace with our Palestinian neighbors.